to welcome everyone, and thank you for your patience, to the first Out and Equal Virtual Summit Series webinar of 2019, titled Mergers, Acquisitions, and Divestitures, Oh My, How Your Employee Resource Group Can Navigate Through a Period of Change for the Company. My name is C.V. Viverito, Global Initiatives Manager. I'm filling in today for Ben Demers, our University Senior Associate, and I'm super happy to be here with you all today. Today's session was organized by our presenters because they know that company mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures are not only huge administrative shifts, but they can also signal major cultural changes for the organization, which can often be an afterthought for company management. So speaking from the experience of Dell's acquisition of VMware, our panelists will discuss how employee resource groups can actually help manage this cultural shift and ease employee concerns around the transition, thus adding business value to your group and also helping ensure that they're not forgotten or put aside during the process. So before we get started, there's just a couple of logistic items that I would like to review. Just a reminder, this is a broadcast audio call that's approximately 1 hour long, meaning that you should be able to hear now, yay, the sound coming through your computer. If you do have issues like you were all doing, just chat in and we will solve the problem. If the audio is not quite coming through on your computer, you can always dial in via phone through the number that you should have received in your confirmation email. If you need that phone number, just let us know through the chat function and we will send it to you. If you or a coworker is listening in via phone but is unsure how to sign in through your computer, you can go to readytalk.com. You can click on Join a Meeting and use the access code 694-6521. If you have any logistical questions during the call at all, like I said, chat them in. We can respond as quickly as possible and solve your issues. But of course, if you also have questions to the content that we're discussing today, please do send in those questions as well. Our presenters will be happy to answer them during a moderated Q&A session towards the end. And don't wait to send in your questions. As soon as you think of them, send them in and we'll flag them for the end. Just a reminder, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording and the slide deck will be shared with everyone who registers for you to watch again or share amongst your networks. Finally, if you're looking to receive SHRM or RCI credit for today's session, please do stick around until the end of the call when the activity ID will be displayed on the screen. I will quickly mention some upcoming webinars and events at Out and Equal. For the month of March, we will be highlighting the intersections of LGBTQ advocacy in the workplace with the fight for employees with disabilities. So we'll be hosting 2 webinars in partnership with Boeing on March 13th and March 28th on these topics. On March 19th, get excited for our Summit Kickoff Call, where we will give you information on this year's Out and Equal Summit, which is being hosted in October in Washington, D.C. If you have any questions about that conference in the meantime, be sure to check out our website. Last but not least, we're very excited to be hosting our annual Executive Forum this year, or Expo, from April 16th to 18th in San Francisco. The forum brings together LGBTQ and ally professionals to engage in professional development and explore key trends in LGBTQ workplace inclusion. We do have some spots left, so I definitely encourage you to check out this information on our website. Okay, with that being said, before we get started for the content of today's call, I want to quickly introduce our wonderful presenters. We're joined by a panel of 5 awesome employees from Dell and VMware. First, we have Laura Folks, HR Advisor and Global Ally Lead with Pride at VMware, who will be moderating today's session. And making up the panel, I'd also like to welcome Loheen Keating, Director of Finance with Dell in Cork, Ireland, and Cork's Pride Co-Lead. Amy Baker, HR Management Partner and Pride at VMware member. Sean Zachariah, PM Senior Advisor and Global Co-Lead and Program Manager of Dell Pride. And Chuck Thompson, Senior Manager of HR Services and Business Optimization and Austin Co-Lead of Pride at VMware, and founding member of the Central Texas Pride Network. We're very excited to have you all with us today, and we're looking forward to what each of you have to share with us. For the folks listening in, like I said, please do feel welcome to send in your questions to the presenters that they can address during the Q&A period during the last 15 minutes of the call. So with that, Laura, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, CV. My name is Laura Folks, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. We're honored to present this workshop, which we originally presented at the Out and Equal Workplace Summit in Seattle. I stay busy at VMware. I'm an HR advisor. I'm the Global Ally Lead for Pride at VMware. And for the past 4 years, I've been a co-lead of Pride at VMware in Austin. I'm also a founding member of the Central Texas Pride Network, which is a coalition of Pride ERG and BRG tech leadership. Now that you know a little about me, I'd like to find out who we're speaking to. Using the survey on the next slide, please let us know how or if you've been impacted by a business change like we're discussing today. You'll have the opportunity to let us know if you have previously been through a merger or acquisition, you are currently going through a merger or acquisition, or you have never been a part of a merger or acquisition. And let's see if I can find that. Let's go ahead and see who we're visiting with. Okay, it looks like the voting is still coming in, but it looks like 47% of you have previously been through a merger or acquisition. 31% currently are, so you're feeling those pain points at this time. In the future, yeah, that's always on everyone's list of possibility, and not planning to, 14%. Hopefully we can help you in the future if this does become a reality. Our slides are a little out of order, so I'm going to just sit back here. So the reality is the merger experience is not unique to any of us. What can be unique is how we react and the progress that can come from that reaction. Today's panel will be sharing stories that will certainly resonate with you. Our panel today is currently part of the Dell Technologies family. Some came from VCE, who moved to EMC, who moved to Dell. Some were from AirWatch, and others were native to either VMware or Dell. The road that leads us to Dell Technologies was one with many junctions and was certainly bumpy at times, but we found that we are stronger together. Our goal today is to help you when your journey suddenly changes. No matter what side of the business change you're on, we want to help you prepare your ERG or BRG to become more resilient so you can embrace a growth mindset. We've seen how combining the different cultural strategies can lead to incredible innovation. By combining our values, skills, and mindsets, we actually increase our sphere of impact. You'll find that not only will this increased impact be felt internally, but it can also be developed into an external reach that happens from having that growth mindset. Let me get us back past this slide. So, as I alluded to earlier, our panelists come from all over, both by geo and by company of origin. Let's have a brief introduction from the panel. Bloheen, do you want to start us off?
I sure will. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Bloheen Keating. I am based in Cork, Ireland. I was actually the co-lead of Pride. I've recently just moved now to be a EMEA co-lead. I'm also heavily involved with Dell's Diversity and Inclusion program, which is called MARC, which is Many Advocating for Real Change. And the picture you see there of me is with my wife and our 2 boys in France last year, enjoying nice sunny weather. Certainly we don't have that luxury here in Ireland, so great to join everybody and meet everybody on this call today.
Hey team, so my name is Amy Baker. I am based in Seattle, Washington. I'm an employee of VMware, but I came to VMware via the AirWatch acquisition, and I was based in Atlanta, Georgia at that time. Was in human resources at AirWatch and joined the HR team with VMware as part of that acquisition. I'm a proud member of the Pride pod, or the Pride organization here at VMware. and kind of have like one of the nuances to the Pride organization. I'm a work from home employee, but I'm part of the virtual Pride network and able to join in. There's a lot of flexibility there with our different pods. Also too, involved with our different diversity inclusion engagements and programs to include VM women.
Hey, this is Sean Zachariah from Dell. I'm based here in Austin, Texas. I'm a senior advisor here in our analytics group. I'm also the global co-lead and program manager for our Dell Pride ERG. Looking forward to sharing with you guys some of the experiences we had with our recent merger and some previous experiences as well.
Hi everyone, this is Chuck Thompson. I'm based in Austin, Texas as well. Senior manager in our HR services organization. Co-lead along with Laura for our Pride at VMware ERG. Within VMware, you'll hear us use the term POD, Power of Difference Community. It's how we refer to our different affinity groups, many different names for them, all kind of the same thing. So, and one of the founding members of the Central Texas Pride Network that we'll talk a little bit more about later in the conversation.
Thanks, Chuck. When companies merge, it's easy to fall into worrying about retaining our ERG titles or focusing on our ERG's quote-unquote win. But that causes us to lose sight of long-term success. According to the International Journal of Innovation and Applied Studies, the largest contributor to merger and acquisition failure has to do with people. That is, how we cope or don't cope with cultural differences and a lack of effective communication. Shane Snow is the author of bestsellers dealing with innovation, teamwork, and storytelling. I love his quote about how we can keep the focus on the end game. He says, businesses which rank high in innovation, the ones that grow quickly and produce game-changing products and services, tend to encourage the airing and clashing of diverse viewpoints, not just having differences, but speaking up, using the cognitive friction to create potential energy. The key in using that energy is to make sure the transition is done in a way where all parties feel safe, seen, and connected. Bloheen, you're certainly someone who has seen your share of these transitions. Can you tell us a little bit about your start at BCE and how ultimately you came to feel safe, seen, and connected?
I will, of course, Laura. Thank you. Yes. So you mentioned at the start, Laura, I liked you talking about the road was bumpy. I think I certainly had a bumpy-ish journey to where I've got to today, and lots of twists and turns. Yeah. So I joined DCE in 2014. At the time, our two boys were 2 and 4, so taking up a lot of our time and energy. So I decided when I was going to join VC, I was going to be very out and I suppose just honest about who I was, talk about my family and so forth. But I guess what I found is, you know what it's like when you join a new company, you're trying to figure out the culture and the people, and I suppose at the same time trying to establish yourself and your new role and develop your career path. So for the first few weeks, I think like a lot of new people joining an org, I was almost stalking out the place. I was looking for signs of LGBTQ plus friendliness, I suppose. Were there employee groups or pods? Was there an exec presence, you know, and was there conversations around or activities around Pride Month, you know? But I didn't see any of those signs, and at least none that were visible to me. And I suppose at that point for me, I did need some surety. I did need something to tell me that this was going to be a safe space for me to be myself, but also to grow my career, which are two very important paths. So I guess I went back to hiding a part of me, a big part of me, and something that was growing, and definitely having the boys, I think hiding them was beginning to take a much bigger toll on me. A year later, VCE got taken over by EMC. No change as such, really. But fast forward, I guess, to 2016, and Dell and EMC, I suppose at the time completed the biggest deal in tech history. I thought, yeah, great, fantastic, that's marvelous. I guess my badge will change. There'll be some new signage over the door, but I thought, pretty much business as usual. And honestly, I was surprised. It was different. Dell had these groups called employee resource groups. Chuck mentioned at the start, they can be called people of difference or pods. And within these employee resource groups, or as we call them now, ERGs, there was a pride group. And there were other groups as well, and they were focused on things that really mattered to employees. And there was also a strong message from Dell about bringing your whole self to work. And this was game changing for me. While it might have been unsaid or inherent or whatever else, this has now been called out and being talked about, and being very much part of the culture and the strategy of the org, right? And I think at that stage then, 2016, I definitely had the signs I needed. So myself and another colleague in Cork, Ireland, we set up the local Pride site in Ireland. Support we got was incredible. Honestly blew us away, and I think a lot of people asked us why we hadn't done this before, right? Not sure I still have quite the right answer to that. But you know what I didn't realize? I suddenly had this new network of Pride members and allies across the globe in Dell EMC. And for an org with 144,000 odd people, having that kind of network and knowing maybe one person in each site was incredible. It was tremendous. And when we had that initial tricky time of integration, and I think we're still going through it, being part of the Pride ERG, you were just able to break down the barriers between the companies. We could almost cut through these bureaucratic, I should say, bun fights that were happening in other parts of the organization. Because being part of the Pride ERG, we didn't care what org or function you came from, as long as you were committed to creating that kind of inclusive environment where you can bring your whole self to work. And I think, Laura, you mentioned it just there, we were all committed to the same outcome. We didn't get all strung up about where you came from or, protecting or worrying about this. We were committed to the same outcome, and it was so different, I just recently actually changed roles in Dell. I've moved into a completely different role where I know nobody. I'm finding my feet in my new role. I'm building my network, and a really unintended kind of benefit is that I'm using actually my Pride network to help accelerate that process, which has been fantastic. So I guess, Laura, all told, it's been a bumpy road. It's been lots of twists and turns, but I think both personally and professionally, it's been fantastic, and I've really got an insight that having that Pride ERG network and community during this tricky time of integration and uncertainty has been hugely beneficial to me, as I said, both personally and professionally.
Thanks, Bloheen. And speaking of that proverbial bumpy road, Amy, I think you can kind of speak to that when you joined us from AirWatch as well.
Yeah, I was thinking when Bloheen was saying that, I was like, it was bumpy, it was also mysterious, and kind of, I was picturing dark and curvy, but might be a little dramatic. But yes, I'd be happy to kind of tell a little bit about my journey. I worked for a company called AirWatch, and we were a small software startup based in Atlanta, Georgia, founded in 2003. And we started out really small, and we grew to about 2,300 employees. And we had a distinct culture, and maybe some of those who are on the call and who are in the process of potentially being acquired or whatnot can relate. Like, we had a strong culture, a proud culture. We felt a lot of pride. Like, we felt we had really cool software that the industry needed and that customers wanted, and we really focused on innovation and relentless kind of focus on execution. And not to say that we were perfect at all, but we had a groove, and we felt we had a strong culture. We were a family. And we'd go to career fairs, and people wanted to work for us, and we had cool swag. I mean, it was just a neat feeling of that you were part of something. And then we found out we were being purchased by VMware. And, I think it's in, when you think of purchasing, just a kind of quick caveat, the word, like, no one likes to be purchased. The word, like, it sounds harsh. Like, no one likes ownership, and yet even in our conversations sometimes today, you'll still hear other fellow VMware employees like, oh yeah, we bought AirWatch. Yeah, we purchased you, or we own AirWatch. And especially in the early days of a merger, that kind of dialogue conveys really like a sense of entitlement or almost like a reassurance that they're in charge as the purchasers, or, it's kind of, I'm sure it isn't hard to imagine, but, no one really wants to be on the receiving end, like kind of those types of phrasing. And so, here we are, we find out we're being purchased, and, during times of mergers and acquisitions, they're definitely tricky actions. Rumors take life, they start swirling around. People start getting worried about layoffs. When you discover you're being purchased, people get scared. And, I think also too, there was a lot of nervousness, but there's also a lot of excitement. Like, we all had stock options and we were like, oh, this is the big day, we're going to make money. And, so a lot of people were waiting for that big day where it all comes together as a startup, but still there's a lot of uncertainty. And really, where there's a lack of information or details about a certain topic, people do not hesitate to fill in the blanks. And that I, have found, and I think maybe others have, that usually when you fill in the blanks is with kind of dramatic worst-case scenarios. So it was definitely a tumultuous time. And from a culture perspective, it was hard. It was hard to give up something that we'd worked really hard to build. And so to go from like a really known, supportive, and small culture to the unknown was really difficult. And from a small company perspective, we didn't have employee resource groups. And here VMware was this larger established organization. We were trying to get our heads around the idea of the acquisition and seeing kind of the inner workings. From my position, I was in human resources, and so I was part of the integration team. I kind of had like an inner scoop and kind of was looking at things really through like an HR lens too. So as an HR person, from folks at AirWatch, I was fielding all types of questions, and here I am, like reassuring people, like employees and leaders, regarding all of these anticipated changes that were coming up, and trying to reassure them and give them information. While honestly, I was privately nervous about my own situation, my own personal situation, which was I was gay. I'm gay in the workplace, and while AirWatch we didn't have partner benefits. Like, we were a startup, we didn't really have a robust benefit availability, but we were very accepting and inclusive. And so I felt totally comfortable being myself, and I definitely brought my authentic self to work. I didn't cover or do any of that. But in the process of being acquired, I found myself kind of going back in the closet, like, if you will. I definitely semi-covered, or I was definitely more cautious, if nothing else. And so here I was part of this HR integration team between AirWatch and VMware. I was being introduced to so many people and leaders at VMware, and I really did start to cover kind of my true self again. And it's mostly through omission. So it's not that I wasn't, a proud out lesbian professional. It's just that I didn't want to be prejudged before people got to know me as Amy the person, or Amy the amazing HR guru who's transformational and everything. But I just didn't want to be known as like Amy the lesbian. And in hindsight, luckily, I needn't have done that, because VMware truly does live the talk and walk the talk, and we are inclusive. But again, it's the mystery of the unknown. At the time, I didn't know that. So as many of you have probably heard stories of people going through changes, or even like with you, when you can't bring your full self to work, or you feel as though you can't, keeping up appearances and kind of lying or covering through omission is exhausting. And so then I had like people at AirWatch who knew things about my life, people at VMware who I wasn't trying to hide, but I just wasn't advertising. And that really does take a lot of effort that could truly be applied elsewhere, and energy and mindsets and stuff like that could have been applied to better things. So while many were curious about what are VMware's benefits and programs going to be, other data points that were being shared were also kind of concerning at the time from an inclusion perspective. At the time we had heard that maybe they had people like leaders who were really potentially conservative, or there were all types of visions of maybe conservative, non-inclusive work environments. And I think, again, this speaks to, in the absence of having true information and truly getting in there to know the culture, people were worried, and so questions swirled like, yeah, they have, what they're calling their epic values. They have values posted, but are they really inclusive? Or I see that they offer same-sex benefits, so that was like one of the first things that I examined. I was like, ooh, they do have same-sex benefits. But I kind of wondered, are they really utilized? Like, is it part of the DNA? Is it really okay to be out and open at work? And the great news is that over time we saw through their actions and people's behaviors, the advertisements for events and like the cultural aspects of VMware, that they really are an inclusive, diverse and inclusive workspace. So it really was through the ERG that I felt excitement and really I don't want to say profound relief, but it was relieving. Like I found excitement and relief that when I saw people like me, like in leadership positions, and I saw that they really spoke to the values of communities. So I was curious to see like who's a member of the ERG, or I just took note of it, I guess is a way to think about it. And there were leaders in all different organizations, and also too, not just openly gay leaders, like specifically in the Pride pod, but also too, allies. And so, that speaks to some stuff that Laura, I hope you'll talk about too as an ally, but there were straight allies and advocates who are members of the pods who are our leaders, and you just saw this kind of seamless culture of inclusion. And so I definitely want to champion like the value of being encouraged to get involved, how to like check out those, Boheen was talking about the pod events, the ERG events, and how those really create ways for you to meet people, for you to see, who all is involved, kind of get some names and faces and kind of go-tos and points of contact. But the whole journey through the merger and acquisition, really truly the ERG, it inspired me to volunteer eventually. So I volunteered to lead a women's dialogue circle that we utilized at VMware, the Stanford Women's Institute curriculum, to talk about female leadership and empowerment in the workplace. And so that inspired me to join that. And then later I joined the Pride Pod. So you can see that the ERGs themselves, they drive culture. And through things like an acquisition or a merger, they really do help people connect and open up doors and really kind of strengthen bonds that if we didn't have them, it would have been a lot harder to really make that connection, to make you as the purchased employee feel welcome and that you can actually see yourself in this new kind of culture and DNA.
Thanks, Amy. About the time you stopped covering at VMware, I'm sure you were excited to hear that Dell announced the intention to make what is still the largest technology acquisition of all time. Sean, you were and continue to be the global co-lead at Dell. Can you speak to what that process looked like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing for this is, I've been at Dell for 19 years and been through several different acquisitions and mergers, but the Dell and EMC merger was definitely different. Probably the big difference was one of the first things that the companies did was realize that D&I was core to its cultures, but for both companies. And so for the first time, we were actually brought into the conversations about how do we bring these ERGs or circles, as they were called in EMC, together. So it was kind of like a step one, knowing that if we can bring those cultures together, we know that's an important thing, how we can that will help us make the merger even more successful. So in that process, we had early contacts from the people in M&A. They actually reached out and asked us, okay, let's talk about what exactly your ERG look like. How are they structured? And in the past, I've seen that those don't go that way, right? Sometimes the D&I part is sometimes an afterthought, and so that's probably a big takeaway that I'd like the people that are listening in on this to this call is kind of how do you get that connection early on? And again, it came from the top. We started working with leaders in both organizations, talking about what does the structure look like. I mean, this is we start getting into the nuts and bolts. So how does your leadership structure? Is there a governance plan in place? I mean, sometimes the dry, boring stuff, but that's really important to having that agreement so day one you can launch as a single unit. We're talking about mergers and acquisitions. In any case, these are always change management scenarios, even outside of the D&I and ERG world. So there's no difference. We're talking about bringing two groups together. So we started meeting early on. We knew who the leaders were on both sides. We started discussing how we want to structure. But I think that one of the important things for ERGs in particular is outside of maybe like your regular job, your day job, it's very specific, structured. But for an ERG, everybody's volunteering their time, and this is something that everyone is passionate about. So a really key learning was focusing in on our passions. What is our similar understandings of what we're trying to accomplish as part of ERGs? Probably, I think both Bloheen and Amy mentioned kind of as acquisitions or mergers started happening, one of the most important things that we tried to do is get the communication out about the brand of what it is so that people knew that it existed, so that people could hear, oh wait, we have these ERGs. Because I think it was an important piece so that people who maybe have been part of the company could feel, oh wait, we do have a Pride ERG, we have a Women's in Action, we've got all the different groups across the board. We also try to kind of understand kind of the different scopes. Dell, Legacy Dell, we have a global presence. The EMC side did have some global presence as well, but they were mainly focused on North America. So we were able to kind of leverage our global exposure from the EMC global sites and start kind of grow. We grew from I think about 15 sites globally to now we're over 30 sites across the globe in all regions. I think the main things I wanted to kind of give you guys and kind of talk about when you're in these scenarios is to get contact early with the leaders of the other ERGs. Sometimes you'll get it through the actual M&A process. I will also say that there are opportunities to just use your network. If you know people at other companies that are being acquiring, you could always reach out. Sometimes it's not exactly the right step to reach outside of the standard process, but it's an easy way to get contacts and start talking about what you're trying to accomplish, what are your goals. Those conversations happening early is, I think, what helps a lot. I will also say there's a reality to mergers and acquisitions. That there's going to be turnover. I think I did see one of the questions that was kind of coming through was talking about turnover. For any kind of merger and acquisition, that's going to happen anyway. People are going to leave the company. People are going to get reassigned in their day job, and so their ability to focus on the ERG is going to lessen, so they're going to have to step away from those roles. And then there's going to be those who no longer feel the ERG works or aligns to what drives them. So something fundamentally changes. Either they feel like their role has, they can't commit to as much, or they're not able to, their input is less. I mean, that last group is really hard because it feels like we fail them because people feel like they have to step away because the changes that are occurring. And unfortunately, we just have to deal with those sometimes. But the good thing is a lot of times people will come back. Maybe people, have their passion that, they've been, anybody who's been doing ERGs over any amount of time know that over time sometimes it gets exhausting. So some people need to take a little bit of a break, but when they come back, they're just as excited and passionate about the work. So I guess, I'm going to kind of wrap up my little speech there, but, going through the process, getting contacts across your different sites, keeping the communication open, finding the things that that are your strengths in your ERG, looking at opportunities that you have across the company to say, hey, maybe you're better at the communications portal than maybe we've been, so let's leverage that. Finding those common grounds to help elevate the ERG is really critical, and kind of reaching out to different contacts and really building the coalitions internally.
I agree. And full disclosure, maybe my first meeting with Sean and the other Dell ERG leaders was over a cocktail, very informally, but it led to some really exciting things, both in Austin specifically and on a more global scale. Chuck, do you want to chime in on some of those activities?
Absolutely. So, as you've heard everybody say, this is, it's a different experience for everyone, and Sean's talking about bringing EMC and sort of integrating them into Dell. Well, during that period, that was not the case for VMware. So VMware, although a part of Dell Technologies, was really left alone. So we're all based in Austin. The way I describe it, we kind of just stayed on our own sides of town for a while. Like, yeah, Laura and I had put a lot of work into developing our Pride ERG here in Austin, so we had a personal interest in ensuring that we maintained that identity and that the foundational work that we had done was not disrupted by, trying to bring Dell into that fold. So shortly after the deal had closed, through some informal networks, we had gotten in contact with Sean and a couple of his colleagues, and so we had made plans to go out for a happy hour after work one day, and we all sat down like awkward kids in the high school cafeteria that were forced to sit at the same table together. But quickly realized, we all have something in common. We're all either a member or an ally to the LGBTQ+ community. We share in the same struggles, and we have, primarily the same goals, is to elevate the conversation in the workplace, and give people coming into our environment or our culture through an acquisition, those signals, and let them know that it's a safe place. So as the conversation went on, we realized, and we always go back to this little tagline, we're better together. So we kept the conversation going, started sharing some of our wins and some of our struggles. Then the conversation started to evolve in early 2017. That why does it have to just be limited to the companies within Dell Technologies? Why is it just Dell and VMware that are coming together and working on this? So we reached out within tech companies in the Austin area, the Central Texas area, to see if there was interest. And sure enough, there was plenty of interest. And we developed the Central Texas Pride Network that now membership includes Dell, VMware, IBM, AMD, Cisco, Google, Accenture, and I think Rackspace is joining us on our next meeting. So we have representation from those companies that we meet quarterly, share best practices, learn from each other. We also have a more social networking event so that members of our community and allies can develop those informal networks. That also produces benefits for the companies. I know I've made some connections that have helped me with inroads to HRC. I've met people at these social networks that have been on panels that we've done here at VMware as well. So there's definitely more benefits than just a social event. So out of something that was really, really sort of awkward, and everybody was kind of afraid to make that first step or reach across the aisle, if you will. Once we were able to sort of get past that and realize, what we're all fighting for the same thing, and we came together, we realized that we really were better together, and we were bigger than just one company. And so we were able to go out in the community and make a much larger impact.
And Chuck, I just wanted to I wanted to jump in there a second, but I think
you
hit on a great part, which is, we're all the ERG user pods, we're all trying to do the same thing, and we all have the same struggles. So it's great when we kind of leverage experiences from other companies, even other parts of the companies, which like we did with the Central Texas Pride Network. It really was you're not alone, right? And you can get that experience and just have other ears to throw these questions to, because we don't do these things perfectly, and again, everybody's doing this as their volunteer time, their passion, and that's, I think, what we realized, that we had that as common ground.
Absolutely. And when we did the live session, someone in the audience had asked a question. They were going through an acquisition, and they didn't really have formal D&I, and wanted to know if it was okay to reach out to somebody via LinkedIn. And we shared some of this story with them. Don't underestimate the power of one small gesture, one small step. right? It's the way that this got started was I think Laura had reached out to somebody within her personal network who knew somebody who was in the Pride ERG at Dell. That's how we got connected, and it just snowballed from there. So if you're going through this, like I said, don't hesitate. Small actions can have big results.
Yeah, I agree. It started off with us pairing with Dell for the Pride Parade here in Austin, something very simple as that. And then through our colleagues that we work with in Costa Rica, they were anxious to participate in a parade as well. Maybe didn't have as many people involved as they needed. And so through our contacts, we were able to put them in contact with the Dell delegation down in Costa Rica. Not only were they ultimately able to work together to have a Pride Parade presence in Costa Rica for the first time, but now it's my understanding that Dell has launched their ERG in Costa Rica as well as a result of seeing what processes were working for VMware there. So through that collaboration, the ripples were great, and it was really exciting to see that. I think at this point we should go to our Q&A session. We have some really great questions. I'm going to ask our panelists to go ahead and unmute. Here is one. What specific activities or programming would you recommend ERGs to implement through an acquisition or merger in order to include and encourage inclusion and allyship? Have you seen any that were particularly successful?
I can jump in first. This is Amy. Some of the most successful activities I'd say was just kind of awareness campaign activities. I'd say, I think whether or not, like we actually had one here. I'm in the Atlanta office today, and we had for the last day of Black History Month, our Black Pod did an event where they had some dancers, some cultural awareness, kind of historical dancer activities. They had vendors, and as part of that event, the other ERGs, again we call them pods, the Power of Difference communities, but other ERGs, they network together to make sure they drive attendance really. And so I've seen a lot of times where you can have events where everyone maybe over the lunch hour, I think those are very popular. You don't always have to give away free food or have giveaways or what have you, but I do think having like a cross section of tying it to something relevant, like it's Black History Month, and so they were doing an event. They had like special guests, like a dancing troupe that came in and did a special performance. They had related vendors as part of the community, and then they did at this, one event, they gave away a free lunch, and I think it was Trinidadian food. But everything kind of correlated for, an awareness and involvement. And then too, I think another thing that's really helpful is when you, and Chuck talked about connecting and learning from the various groups. I think also too, as you start getting some things kicked off, like we have, women at VMware, we have many different pods. But the more the pods can support each other, share their best practices, but also to drive participation as allyship. Like have people who aren't maybe part of a particular crowd, but I don't think you can stress how much allyship and driving participation and interest and how much support that is really gets people talking, making people feel like they're involved. Because sometimes I think there's a hesitancy where people think, well, I'm not, Asian, so I'm not going to go to the Asian at VMware or the Chinese at VMware group. You don't have to be. It's all about taking an interest, getting involved. Or I'm not gay, I'm not going to go to the Pride event. No, it's about allyship. It's about participation, the inclusive community. I think there's a lot of desire, but sometimes people need to know that it's okay and you want them to be involved. So I'll pause and let someone else jump in.
Good point, Amy. And I think that that's something that we're trying to shift a little bit in our mindset as pods at VMware, because in the past, as a Pride group, we have thought, okay, either you're a member of Pride or you're not. And if you want to be an ally, that's fantastic. But all we promoted was really Pride-specific materials. And we realized that some of our colleagues were a little hesitant about the identification that comes with being a part of of the Pride Pod that although they wanted to be an ally, they didn't want there to be confusion. And so for whatever reason, they're not comfortable in being openly an ally because there's no differentiator there. And so we're working on that as a focus point for this upcoming year to develop an ally education program, and people can use an ally symbol to indicate that they are our allies to get more people out there. We have little Pride indicators for our Pride Pod program, and people put those up in their cubes. Just having something small like that, like a rainbow heart, and in this case, if they don't feel comfortable with that, they'll be able to have the, it's like an upside down A with the rainbow flag in it to try to increase visibility, because I think that that is really key. Amy and I grew a friendship out of a miscommunication when she joined, and I love to tell the story.
Yes, we did. You need to tell that story because that one's funny.
So one of my dearest friends and colleagues was out on paid parental leave, and she had a picture in her cube of her and her wife, and I guess not the baby because it was paid parental leave. But Amy had made her first trip into Austin to kind of sniff around, see what we were about, and she was dressed to the nines, and I heard her voice say, "Is this Callie's partner?" But Amy swears she didn't say it that way. But I got very defensive, and I said, "No, actually, that's her wife." And then I think we eventually got to laugh about it because here I thought I was being a protective ally of my friend. But
I know, and here I was excited because I was like, "Oh my gosh, another lesbian couple!" So I was like, "Is that her partner?" And I would think I was excited, and you were defending a friend, and I was like, "No, I'm excited." So it was a funny way for us to connect and bond.
It was, and it's a great example of how miscommunication happens, and the insecurity of moving into the unknown for both sides is very difficult at some point. Okay, let's go to another question. How have you been able to get people motivated to get involved and stay involved? Great question. Would someone on the panel?
This is Sean. Yeah, this is Sean. I'll kind of jump on that. I think getting people excited about ERG work in general is sometimes difficult, but it is finding their passions. So, even part of this ours is the Pride group. When people come and ask me why they should join an employee resource group, and we give them all the reasons, you got to find a group that you're passionate about. So maybe if Pride isn't the group that you're passionate about, but maybe Women in Action from a Dell perspective, go join the ERG that you're passionate about, and then try to point people at activities that they really like, and have a diverse set of activities. Early on when we started our ERGs as networking groups many moons ago, they were all mainly happy hours, which is a great way to start your ERG, but it's not necessarily a thing that kind of gets everybody going. So find activities, create various activities, things that are family friendly, things that are maybe not during work hours, maybe some events that are outside of work hours, some that are community based. So finding various activities that kind of draw more people. And then once you get those people there, you can start seeing who might have a little bit of an interest in doing some more of the regular day-to-day work. Because it takes a lot of work to keep an ERG running, and you really want to find those active participants. Some people just want to join the ERG, and other people actually want to get some of the work done. And you got to find those people and just tap into what their energies and what they are passionate about, in work-wise, and also just kind of how they can help your organization. So.
I agree, and also, go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going to say, I would echo that. Find what people are passionate about, and flexibility, right? If you have somebody to sign up to a specific role, they're worried about time commitments and how that's going to distract from their, I'm using air quotes, day job. And so that's what Laura and I have found is it's actually easier to keep more people engaged in shorter intervals than it is to get a small group of people to commit for an extended period. So find what they're passionate about and plug those people in to those tasks or those work streams or those events.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of our questions kind of in the live session also addressed this, and the person indicated that they were just having a hard time, getting involved in the new, bigger combined ERG. And we also encourage them to look at how the group could make an external impact and try to find where they can make that kind of change themselves. If there's not a role internally that speaks to you, and you've kind of lost a little bit of the passion behind what you were doing, I would challenge people to find their own opportunities. We had another question. I am transitioning to be the lead at my plant for the LGBTQIA+ ERG. I want to do an event at the end of March for trans awareness. I've been told not to come off too strong or rock the boat too much, and I really don't agree. I think a lunch and learn isn't abrasive, and I don't want to diminish or take away that opportunity. How should I proceed?
I think yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just a real quick one. So we did, last year we did an event. It was an education event focusing on the transgender community in Cork. And the way we positioned it was how to support your family, friends, colleagues on their coming out story. And as part of that, we had we had a parent with a LGBTQ+ child. We had a mother there with a transgender child. We had a transgender employee actually from VMware, and then we had somebody from a local community group. So it was a real kind of cross section of folks. My advice would be make sure you use your allies. I think they are such an important part of carrying your message. Whether that's for the transgender community, the bisexual community, or all parts of our community. But the ally community, the ally group is just such an important part for carrying that voice and making sure that, a good kind of cross section of panelists as well to even out kind of the conversation, But the other thing I wrote there in one of the chat things, exec sponsorship is really critical. So if you're going to be a new site lead, just make sure that you've got that exec sponsorship either at a site level or somewhere beyond, because making sure that you've got that exec sponsorship helps to smooth that path at times, open doors, get things done, because we've certainly bumped up against stuff at times, and that's one of the things we've probably now recognized, that we didn't have someone sitting necessarily at the right table all the time to go to bat for us. So sorry, Sean, you were going to jump in there.
Nope, you were perfect. That's better than what I was going to say. So.
And I'll just add on to that be respectful of of the company culture, but in terms of being uncomfortable, I know within our leadership team across North America, we are okay with pushing people to be a little bit uncomfortable, because that's how they grow and that's how they expand. So I caveat that with be respectful of the company culture, but that's kind of our charter a little bit in lead roles, right? Is to push people to maybe get out of their comfort zone to learn and understand something.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And hey, I'll jump in too. When you were talking about pushing people and challenging the mindset, the status, I think one of the best ways to do that is to ensure that you can get some not only support from quote unquote senior leadership, but them being visible and present at some of these activities. One of the things that stands out to me was with our Pride, I think it was the Pride Pod in Bangalore, India, one of our software offices. They had they set up a Pride booth, in the cafeteria, I think, and it was a common area. I think it was a cafeteria, and they had some modest interest, but it was when the site leader stood there and called people over to say hello, and when other leaders in a group welcomed people, the interest and really the people taking the social cues to know, oh, it's okay, or it kind of speaks to like, is there going to be any misconception of my interest in wanting to support or what have you? Whether or not it's not just that senior leadership says yes, this is our values, we want to be inclusive, but also to have them be visible, have them volunteer to come to attend, and broker behind the scenes to make sure they actually do attend, and really try. That will help, I think, really not only kick off the success of your pod or your ERG, but that continued sustained success for allyship.
Great point, Amy. One of our attendees has a great question. We are part of a large global company with a well-established Pride ERG, and we recently completed the acquisition of another large global company also with a well-established Pride ERG. No bumps there. It seems like HR or D&I have not taken the initiative to combine these groups, and we have started reaching out ourselves. Any thoughts on how to spearhead this or push corporate HR as we are quickly approaching June Pride, push common branding, etc., when there seems to be more focused on common benefits, etc.?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that one. I think exactly what you're doing is the people, those of you that are running the actual ERGs, just start working together. I mean, you're already part of the same company now. I mean, you may not be able to make structural changes, but you can start working together. You can start, even, something as simple as communications. You may have two separate email lists. Well, just make sure you're sending the same messaging to all groups. You can coordinate that stuff. I mean, that, I know on our side at Dell, our D&I team is very happy when, and Pride generally is the group that does it, we kind of jump in front of things and start just doing them. And that sometimes creates new processes, and you can become the people that, hey, you integrated the groups before anybody else, you become the best practices that other ERGs could use. So it is just communicating out, where you can work together, just keep connected and just kind of start making some decisions. And if you have to work within two different silos, then you can, but maybe coordinate those efforts. So.
Okay, I think we are about at time. Since we haven't been able to answer all of the questions, if you did submit a question that wasn't answered, we will try to get back to you individually. This is going to conclude our workshop. Our names and contact information are on this slide right here. Please feel free to reach out to any or all of us if we can assist you further. We truly do want to make this process as simple as possible, and we are truly stronger together as we all have an interest in ERGs and Pride specifically. If we can help in any way, shape, or form, we're all here to support you. CB?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I definitely want to extend a huge thanks to you all wonderful presenters today. I don't think I speak for myself when I say that we all learned a lot from your experience and advice, so thank you so much. And of course, thank you everyone for attending and engaging in today's conversation, and for sending in so many really well thought out questions to make for a really informative Q&A session. So thank you everyone. Please do remember to join us in March for some of our other webinar sessions. And last but not least, please do fill out the survey after this call so that we can continue to cater our webinar content for your needs. We really do value your feedback. If you have any questions about our upcoming events or Expo, Summit, you can visit our website at outandequal.org for more information. Last but not least, if you are looking to collect SHRM or HRCI credit for today's session, please go ahead and see those activity IDs on the screen now. I think you might as well go ahead and write them down since this webinar is about to close. And if you are dialing in and not on your computer, really quickly, the SHRM code is 19-9VTEQ. The HRCI code is 381031. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you next time. Stand by.